Well, hello everybody. Right now I am in Healdsburg, California. This is one of the areas that's in the path of the current PG&E public safety power shutoff affecting 940,000 people. That is roughly 1 in 5 public utility or electric customers in Northern California affected by this public safety power shutoff. I'm going to close my laptop real quick and just get out of the car so I can show you what I'm seeing. So Healdsburg is also one of those towns that's in the path of the Kincade Fire, and everybody in town has been evacuated, or at least this area is under a evacuation order, as well as the towns nearby of Windsor, Geyserville received those mandatory evacuation orders a couple days ago actually, and with some pretty serious winds moving in town or moving in the area, pretty much this whole area has been asked to evacuate. But this is what it looks like in Healdsburg right now. There are just a couple of lights that have been set up in town, but pretty much everything else is completely shut down. These lights are likely just to make it a little bit easier for law enforcement to be able to get through the town, but the whole town has been pretty much shut down. We've seen some law enforcement in the area driving around. It looks like they're patrolling to make sure that there's nobody here that shouldn't be here. Of course, during these situations, people take advantage of it, and they'll, go around and they start looting. We haven't heard any news of that just yet, which is a good sign. But of course, during these emergency situations, a lot of times folks will do that, unfortunately. But again, right now we're in Healdsburg, and it looks like a ghost town as the Kincade Fire grows near. I was just on the other side of the ridge, just about 10 miles from here, and there is some pretty considerable burning happening. The good news, from my perspective at least, is that firefighters were doing some active burns, some controlled burns, burning up the hill. Winds haven't set in as dramatic as they're expected to be later this evening, but so I imagine that's why firefighters are trying to get whatever back burns they can get in before these winds set in, because they don't want to be burning once we have those major winds. But again, we had some pretty good flames behind us, and that was up on the ridge top. But in terms of the distance from here to where the active burning is, it's still a good 10 miles away, which is a comfortable position right now. But of course, authorities are getting everybody set up, getting everybody in place, and they've in terms of fire resources, but then they've also moved everybody out, just because once these winds do come in overnight, I mean, we're talking about 70-mile-an-hour winds, very dramatic, one of the biggest windstorms and events of this kind that Northern California has seen in years. That's why they've evacuated the towns of Healdsburg, Windsor, and Geyserville, which was even evacuated just a couple days ago when the Kincade Fire first started. This is what it looks like in Healdsburg right now. The whole town is being lit by these giant lights that have been brought in by officials to light the town, and they're being powered by generators. And I'll show you right now. We've got law enforcement from Healdsburg. They're driving around, making sure to keep everybody safe, making sure to keep the area safe, because as I was saying, and as we have seen with the many fires that we've covered in the past, unfortunately, folks will take advantage of these situations and they begin looting. But again, I haven't heard anything of that nature yet, so that's a good sign. And what it looks like right now in Healdsburg, at least, it is a ghost town. Normally, they'll have these, the whole town's pretty much lit up. They've got these beautiful lamps. And anyway, so I'm gonna hop back in the car. We're gonna head to Santa Rosa because we're learning that the, excuse me, my seatbelt on. We are learning tonight that the hospital, one of the hospitals in Santa Rosa, has been evacuated. And we're gonna go down there to check that out to see what those evacuations are looking like. Excuse me, that's a little dark. I'll show you. Again, we've got some law enforcement circling the block, a couple of photojournalists, and that's pretty much all that you should see right now if you're traveling through one of these towns that are in mandatory evacuation orders, because, you know, but besides firefighters, law enforcement, or journalists, those are the only folks that should be here right now. Everybody else should be out because, of course, the huge potential for evacuations. Oh, I'm trying to get that information for you right now, Vanessa. I will pull that up. Let me sign into my laptop so I can get to our folks watching. Jeff, if you're on here, Jeff Dietrich's our digital manager. Could you respond with what hospital in Santa Rosa we're heading to? It is the... Just want to make sure that we're giving you the right information. Let me set this up here while I can. Vanessa, I haven't heard that just yet, but it will certainly depend on the winds overnight. But I imagine that could be a possibility. Because the winds are heading south. The fire is within a decent distance of here, and that could be a possibility. It's the Deleuze area. So for everybody that's joining us, we are heading to Santa Rosa because we're learning that a hospital is being evacuated due to it being under a mandatory evacuation order because of the Kincade Fire. We know right now the Kincade Fire's burned roughly more than 25,000 acres, and it's claimed more than 50 homes and other buildings. Meanwhile, folks in this area are dealing with public safety power shutoff. Some have been dealing with it for a couple of days. The power is turned back on, and now it is being put back. Let's see. It's not letting me on to the internet, so I'm gonna excuse me everybody right now while we I get connected to the internet so I can get all the information for you, because we have some information confirmed from the hospital. Joey, I am working to get all that information for you right now. I'll be able to answer that very shortly. Okay. There we go. Okay, gonna go back to Vanessa's question asking about which hospital has been evacuated. Things are not moving as quickly as I'd like them to. Okay, there we go. There's the answer. Sutter Regional Hospital. Right now, here's what we know. Pulling up this link. Now, there are about 90,000 people currently ordered to leave their home as the Kincade Fire burns here in Sonoma County. Evacuations hit the hospital as well as the jail as the authorities are fighting the fire here in Northern California that spurred blackouts, also forcing people out of their neighborhoods. We're learning that the Sonoma County Sheriff's Office says that inmates at the North County Detention Facility in Santa Rosa, they were cleared today. Inmates who were taken, and they're going to be housed in Alameda County. Meanwhile, Sutter Health Regional Hospital, the Sutter Santa Rosa Regional Hospital, they started evacuations of roughly 101 patients this evening. That, we learned, started just maybe an hour or so ago. Now you can see that it's a roadblock heading north, so that looks like everything north of Windsor. We are in Windsor right now, is currently, you can't move any further than this, and we're on 101. So everything north of 101 is now being blocked by law enforcement because of this area being under a mandatory evacuation order. We are heading south towards Santa Rosa again after the Sutter Santa Rosa Regional Hospital was evacuated. Roughly 101 patients starting this evening. They're being taken to other facilities in the area that will be safer as the Kincade Fire moves forward. Now, CAL FIRE is saying that severe gusts of wind are expected to start early Sunday morning. That could push the fire miles ahead of the main blaze that's chewed off more than 40 square miles of dried brush and timber in the area. Now PG&E is, meanwhile, PG&E has started to introduce their public safety power shutoffs. Those are aimed at preventing any further fires from happening in the region. We are traveling south, heading towards Santa Rosa. We just passed the small town of Windsor, and we learned everything on the 101 north of Windsor, between Windsor and Geyserville, is now closed. So don't head that direction. If you're not law enforcement, if you're not CAL FIRE, if you're not a firefighter or media, you're not going to be able to go that way. Officials are doing this, of course, for safety, because we have some very erratic winds and some very high possibility of winds that are predicted in this area. Another thing that, of course, Caltrans is going to want you to know, you can't read that sign right now, but one important thing to note: if you reach a four-way stop, if you reach any stop, and it is in a, it's got blinking, flashing red lights, or it's completely out, it should be treated as a four-way stop. There's power out all over the area. Roughly 1 in 5 PG&E customers, they are going to be without power tonight as high winds come in and the company shuts off power for public safety. So it's highly likely that you're not going to, that you may not have power and you'll run into an area that doesn't have power. Angela, so the 101, correct? We're on the, the 101, starting at Windsor to Geyserville, that's going to be closed down, so you won't be able to go that way. If anybody has any questions for me, feel free to shoot them to me, and I'll make sure to get the information to you as quickly as possible. Now, one of the other things that I wanted to bring up, and we have this on our website, abc10.com. Sonoma County's Office of Education has already announced that there is several school districts in the area that will be closed on October 28th due to the power shutoff, as well as the fire threat of the Kincade Fire, evacuation orders, as well as air quality concerns. There are more than a dozen school districts that are closing. That encompasses dozens and dozens of schools, from the Alexander Valley School District to Bennett Valley, Forestville, Geyserville Unified Schools, Harmony School District, Healdsburg Unified, and many more. A whole list of that is on our website already, so you can find that. Keep the questions coming. I'll do my best to give you a name drop to make sure that you got your question answered, but please feel free to send it to us. Stephanie, Kaiser Hospital, let's see if we can get an answer on that. At this point, all we have learned is that the Santa Rosa Regional Hospital began evacuating roughly 101 patients this evening. Sutter Santa Rosa Regional Hospital is the only one that we have reported closed right now, or that we have reported to have began evacuating people. Wes, I see you're watching from Southern California. My thoughts and prayers going to all the folks down in Los Angeles today dealing with the tick fire. I know that firefighters have that at about 25% containment, but certainly some huge concerns. 50,000 people down there were evacuated from their homes, and it's just a terrible situation all around. Unfortunately, the fire conditions in California are just perfect, but perfectly bad for fires to happen, and wish it wasn't the case, but that's the state that we live in right now. Driving with Miguel. He is ABC 10's newest photojournalist. Glad to have him with us. It's going to be a long evening tonight as we bring you updated information on this. So we're in Calistoga right now. We're getting off the exit to head towards one of the hospitals that started evacuating patients, and that is the Sutter Regional Hospital of Santa Rosa. And we're heading that way to see what things are looking like now. Let's see what our latest update is from our digital team that's tracking all this information for us. Let's see. Okay. The hospitals right here are pulling up on it now. Sonoma State University saying residential students have left the campus. So everybody that goes to Sonoma State University, looks like their dormitories are being evacuated. All buildings are now locked. They're going to continue to provide updates via email and their website as the situation continues to evolve, and they're encouraging everybody in the community to put safety first, and that's certainly something that I can't stress enough. That is definitely an issue. So of course we've got some roadblocks here. We're gonna speak with security. Hello. And let them know we're with ABC 10 in Sacramento.
Okay, all right. So we're just having all media members go ahead and stage over there.
Okay. Do you know if anyone from the hospital is going to be coming out?
They should be. I don't know when.
Okay.
Everything's just kind of hectic right now.
Yeah, we understand. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. We appreciate what you're doing.
No worries.
Okay. So obviously they can't have anybody else continuing to come into the hospital because they're trying to get things out, and that was from a security officer that we just spoke with. He said, you know, things are kind of hectic right now, and a lot of times in these situations they certainly are. Let's go back to Vanessa, who had another question for us. is the Veterans Center in Santa Rosa still open for evacuees? Do not have that answer just yet, but I'm going to come back to you, okay? Sutter is taking precautions as they aren't in danger. Do you know where the fire is actively burning, such as the south and north boundaries? I don't 100% know exactly how far the boundaries are of the fire, but I do know that I was just off of Pine Flat Road near Alexander Valley, and there was some pretty considerable burning happening there. I might even be able to post a photo. Let me see if I can do that. I may not be able to do it off my phone right now, but I do have some photos from from what it looked like. Actually, I can pull it up right now for you and just flip it around and show you a couple of the shots that we have. So this is what it looked like just a little bit ago, again in the area of Pine Flat Road and near Alexander Valley. So that was probably about just a few miles off of few miles from Pine Flat Road, and that's obviously near closer to Geyserville. But there were some crews in there that were going in with doing some control burns as well as back burning. And this right here, if you see me highlighting my mouse over this is a bulldozer, and they're building some fire lines in that area. So not all of this fire was naturally occurring, and I have to be honest about that and make sure that you guys understand that as well. Some of this, you see this right here, all of these men and women that are on this line, they were doing some back burns, so it looks like they're trying to get a control of it ahead of the windy conditions that we're expected to see this evening. And I'll pull up a couple more shots. So again, these here's our bulldozers right here. They're moving. They were moving in along Pine Flat Road and in near Alexander Valley. Yeah, they got the photographer. So that's the case. We're just getting out to the. We're just now getting to the hospital. We're going to get out here and see if we can maybe get some questions answered just about what the plans are, where patients are being taken to from the Sutter Santa Rosa Regional Hospital, which started evacuating a little more than 100 patients. That happened Garnerville. So if you're in Garnerville, let me pull up the map. Garnerville, I believe, is to the west of where the fire is burning, but I'm going to pull that map up so then I can show you exactly what it means. Rose, so when I say back burn, that means that fire crews are actually battling fire with fire. So they come in, they have these canisters of fuel, and they're actually pushing the fire uphill, and they actually have essentially, they're not really flamethrowers, but they have lit canisters that kind of look like maybe a candle, and what they do is they burn the fire uphill so then they can at least control the position, because the goal right now is that with this fire burning really in the middle of the mountains, they don't want it to jump the ridge where the town of Geyserville, Windsor, and all of these other small towns that are in the area, Healdsburg, right? So they can back burn it, and then they can use a hose and they put it out, so it burns any of the thick fuels like trees, like brush, any of those sorts of things. And it's a very effective method to fight wildland fires, and it's something that they do. But I don't imagine that they're going to be doing many back burns once the evening sets in and high winds roll in, right? We're expected to see 60, 70, as much as 80 mile an hour winds overnight, and that's obviously a major concern, and that's why even so much as the towns of Windsor and Healdsburg have recently been under a mandatory evacuation order. And then, of course, the Sutter Santa Rosa Regional Hospital. This is actually in the Calistoga area, and portions of this hospital has also already been evacuated. Guerneville. Let me get that answer for you, because I want to address Chris first in Guerneville and try to get an answer about where exactly the fire is. Lost my internet, but I can't pull up the map just now yet. Sorry, I don't know this area well enough to say exactly where all these small towns are. CG, sorry if I'm saying your name wrong. The winds have started. I wouldn't say the winds are dramatic, but when I got here 3-4 hours ago, there was almost no wind. There's not a lot of movement. But one of the things the firefighters told me as I was heading towards that area that I was just showing you a little bit ago, where there was some pretty active burning, when I went in, firefighter he stopped and he just said, "Hey, where are you going? What's going on?" So we're just going to go get some video of the flames so we can show folks. And he's like, "I can't stop you, but one of the things I want to point out is that the smoke, we couldn't smell it a little bit ago. We couldn't smell it earlier today, but we're starting to smell it now. That means that the smoke is starting to blow in. It's moving the smoke around, and it's also moving the fire around, and that's where the biggest concern is." However, we are continuing to monitor this. Let me get out and show you where exactly we are. Chris, I'll have to check a map if you're still watching, and I will respond to you to give you an idea of where the fire is actively burning a little bit later. But we were at the Sutter Santa Rosa Regional Hospital. Lots of media has already showed up.
I was told they haven't started the official evacuation. They're still going to come and pick
Okay.
people up. So
Okay.
we're waiting on that, like ambulances coming in.
Okay, so what we're learning right now is that ambulances are coming in, and it looks like they actually haven't started the official evacuation of the Sutter Santa Rosa Regional Hospital, but that is expected to start soon. So if you've got anything in here, Chris, why don't you send me a direct message, and I will get back to you just on the town, and I'll try to send you actually a map. I can circle it to you a little bit later, and get you the information on exactly where I saw the fire and where I understand it to be right now, and I'll send you a picture of that later. Rose, so is the governor helping? So I spent a couple hours with the governor earlier today. He was in Napa Valley. He joined a number of folks from across the state leaders. Hold on a minute, let me wipe off my screen. So the governor joined state leaders as well as union leaders, and he was backed by long-term care workers, because one of the concerns with these public safety power shutoffs is that elderly folks as well as the disabled and the most medically vulnerable aren't able to get to resources, because if they don't have power, they need medicine, they need generators, they need power specifically. A lot of folks that are on oxygen need to be able to get that. So one of the things the governor mentioned today is he just released $75 million in aid. That's going to be going to local counties across the state that have been affected by these public safety power shutoffs. Those local counties, state counties, and city governments are each individually going to be given some money that they can use for their individual communities. It's going to be up to the local leaders to make the decision on where exactly the money goes towards, but the governor told me that they could be used to purchase generators, they could be used to purchase resources such as like communications, because one of the issues during these public safety power shutoffs, or PSPSs as becoming a part of our vernacular, that acronym, is these may need communication, so they can bring in mobile cell towers, so then people have cell service right now, because obviously when the power shuts off, then even the cell towers go down because they rely on cellular service. But a couple of weeks ago, remember, we did have a major PSPS, major public safety power shutoff, and I spoke with representatives from the telecommunications industry, and they say they are prepared for these types of events. Unlike, say, a wildfire that may spark up overnight, and then they have to just rush resources in as quick as possible. We knew this was coming for at least 3 days, right? At least 3 days, if not longer. Probably I'd say about a week. We knew that these winds were likely to come in. So I imagine that everybody in the telecommunications industry, as well as law enforcement, firefighting, they've all been able to stage resources early in this event, so then they can make sure that things like, you know, cell towers don't go down, and if they do, they have backup contingencies such as mobile cell towers, so then they can provide those resources, because firefighters need those. They need telecommunications, as well as getting it out to the public, just like you and I, to be able to be able to watch the news, to be able to get information from local agencies, to you know, to be able to understand what exactly is happening when the power goes out. If you're joining us just now, we are currently at the Santa Rosa Regional Hospital, where the hospital is expected to begin evacuating patients this evening as the Kincade Fire grows close and as windy conditions are expected to be hitting the area. So this is near Calistoga. If you're driving down the 101 right now, if you live in the area, or if you're going to be going down the 101 at Windsor North to Geyserville, the 101 currently has a roadblock up, and you're not going to be able to get through unless you're law enforcement, firefighter, media, okay? So, and that's because the Kincade Fire is very actively burning. We have some high winds that are expected to be burning through the area, or coming through the area, excuse me. And it's dangerous, and that's why fire officials went ahead and they put in a mandatory evacuation order in this area. I'm going to go ahead and go back in the car. Miguel, do you have your other? Thank you. So, right now we've got all kinds of media staged here. They're waiting to get some answers from the hospital, figure out what exactly the plan is to do with these more than 100 patients at the hospital that's expected to be evacuated shortly. If anybody has any questions for me, please feel free to send them over my way, and I'll do my best to answer them for you. Mike Garza, Mercedes, thanks for joining. Right now we are in Santa Rosa not Santa Rosa, we're actually in the Calistoga area, but we're at the Sutter Santa Rosa Regional Hospital, near where the Kincade Fire is burning. It is under an evacuation order, and the hospital is pre-planning to get patients out ahead of windy conditions expected tonight, which could potentially bring the Kincade Fire closer and closer to several small towns, including, and I'm just going to go by order from north to south, Geyserville, Healdsburg, and Windsor. And then, of course, Calistoga and Santa Rosa's next. Now, this area isn't immune, and they know that because they've been through these fires before. Just a couple of years ago, the North Bay fires burned through the Tubbs Fire. I was there, I covered it. It was absolutely devastating, taking more than 1,500 homes and businesses and 44 lives. So this community has unfortunately been through this before, and it looks like they're battling it again. So far, the Kincade Fire is roughly 25,000 acres. It's burning very actively in the mountains, in the Alexander Valley, and Knights Valley. And about 50 homes and other buildings have been destroyed. Most of that area is under mandatory evacuation orders, and these folks, a lot of people have left. The power is also out because concurrently the PG&E public safety power shutoff, that is happening now. And as many of you know, especially if you're living in Northern California, this current PSPS will now be, or at least it's predicted to be, the largest public safety power shutoff in state history, reaching 940,000 customers. And to give you some context on the scope of how large this is, that's roughly 1 in 5 electricity customers in Northern California. PG&E has roughly 5 million customers, and 940,000 would relate to, because there's usually more than one person living in a household, right? That is roughly more than 2.5 million people that will be affected by this next public safety power shutoff. One question that a lot of people are having is, how long will this public safety power shutoff last? Well, there's a couple of reasons that it's likely to last at least 48 hours, likely even longer. The first answer is, well, once they shut the power off, they're going to have to keep the power off until the winds die down, okay? So they're turning the power off a few hours before the winds actually pick up and are at their height. So they're doing this so then their equipment doesn't cause or spark any wildfires, because utility companies in California have been held responsible for starting many wildfires in the past. Adina, so what's your question on that though? Because you said, I thought they have shut it off before the fires to prevent them. Yes, that's correct. Unfortunately, in this situation, Adina, fire already sparked a couple of days ago. Now, what we know about the Kincade Fire is that it started near a PG&E transmission line. So there's a couple of different things that happen here. One, the transmission lines, which are called high power, high voltage transmission lines, those are the really big metal towers that stretch for miles and miles, typically in more rural areas. Those transmission towers provide electricity to the larger grid, and that's what the smaller poles kind of run off of. Where the Kincade Fire it happened, hold on a minute.
I'm just gonna feed that very quick.
Okay.
They just arrived.
Did they talk to you?
No.
Oh, okay.
They arrived. All the ambulances arrived.
Here's your cable. Sorry about that. We've got. Thank you. Active. Some things happening right now. Okay, so to get back to your question, Adina. So essentially, the high transmission power lines were not powered down before the spark of the Kincade Fire. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that PG&E is responsible for this fire at all. That's still under investigation. But the company did say that it had reportedly received some malfunctions with the power, with a high transmission power tower minutes before the Kincade fires started, and it did happen in that area. So in the past, the power company has and hasn't shut down these high transmission lines. So, you know, one of the things that the company is getting is that people are frustrated that they don't necessarily live in an area that experiences these high wind or any type of major weather events, but they get their power shut off. Well, that's what happens when the company shuts off the high transmission lines, because those lines are they're it's a part of the larger grid. So and again, the company is currently planning to shut the power off, so then they're their equipment isn't held responsible and they can keep people safe. That's the biggest goal that PG&E has said over and over and over again, is that they want to make sure that they keep people safe. And with winds reaching 70 to 80 miles an hour, it's possible that either their equipment could be damaged and spark a fire, or something could hit their equipment, such as a fallen tree, such as anything like that, and it could damage their power line and then also break it and then spark. And if the power line isn't de-energized, well, that's when we get into those fires. We've got a lot of people that are starting to join and watching in. If you have any questions for me, please feel free to send them my way. Thanks, Kevin John, for joining in and watching. Right now we are in the Calistoga area. I'm gonna walk over here because we're in front of the Santa Rosa Sutter Regional Hospital, where folks are expected to be joining in, or expected to be evacuated shortly, patients here, because of the threat of the Kincade Fire. Let's see, here's what it looks like right now. I'm told that just a short while ago some ambulances arrived, and they're going to be helping to transport patients in the area to other area hospitals during this event. So we're going to be continuing to follow this. If anybody doesn't have any more questions, I'm probably going to go ahead and end this because we're expecting to hear from some hospital officials. I'll continue to update this. If you have any questions, you can feel free to comment, post on this feed, and I'll go ahead and go through this and I can answer those questions even though we're not doing it live. But I'm going to continue to gather. Now we have a show coming up on ABC 10 Late News Tonight, and then that starts at 11 p.m. Pacific time. Then it ends at 11:30, but we're going to keep it going on Facebook Live through midnight. Then of course, and then it's going to start back up again at 1 a.m. This is partially to help get some information to folks that may be impacted by the Kincade Fire burning in California's wine country, as well as the 940,000 Pacific Gas and Electric customers here that are going to be experiencing power outage later tonight. That's more than 2.5 million people, and it's absolutely the largest PSPS or event of its kind that's ever happened in California. That's because there are major winds expected to be blowing into the area, and people and the power companies want to make sure that no fires are sparked by electric lines that could be damaged during this big event. I appreciate every one of you for watching. If you live in wine country and you might be affected by the Kincade Fire, or if you have homes in the path of that, my thoughts and deepest prayers are going to be going out to you tonight, because I can't imagine what it's like for those folks to have to deal with that, especially if you have to leave your home and not be able to get back until the event's over and not knowing what's going on. But that's why we're here, is trying to provide you the latest information as it comes. And I really tell you this, if you have questions, if you live somewhere, feel free to send the, you can, if you don't want to comment on this post, you don't have to comment on this post, you can send me an inbox. I'll do my best to give you answers, especially if you live in the area. But abc10.com is a great resource as well. If I can't get back to you right away, another thing that you can do is go straight to abc10.com, and you can likely get some answers there. I know there's going to be some schools that are shutting down in Northern California, and they've already been reported to be closing down on Monday, and that's all of the schools that are in the area of the Kincade Fire, Geyserville, Sonoma County specifically. So you can keep looking at that. Yeah, we got guys from KGO gonna get out of their shot now. So anyways, if you all have any questions for me, like I said, feel free to send them my way, but I will I'm gonna keep updating you guys, but I'm gonna have to do that on later on, probably not live. But thank you very much for watching, and we're gonna keep it up. So thanks so much.